welcome to 21st Century Supply Chain Planning, Empowering Manufacturers. Today we're here with David Mattersdorfer, the Managing Director at Madana. We're going to get into unlocking sustainability, leveraging secondary raw materials for future success, future manufacturing success. So today I'm going to get into the purpose of the webinar series. I'll introduce our expert speaker, David, and then I'll hand it over to Christof to moderate the Q&A discussion today. So the purpose of this webinar series is primarily to connect people and experts within manufacturing and supply chain planning. And our main goal, as you can see here, is to empower manufacturing companies to navigate 21st century challenges and future-proof supply chain planning activities. The series is powered by us here at Quantics. Quantics focuses on manufacturing companies, so we serve leading clients with up to 20 billion annual total revenue, and we support users across the globe now, which we're excited about. And we focus on demand and sales forecasting, demand planning, and inventory optimization and replenishment in our solutions. We're a best-of-breed AI-driven solution, and like we said, primarily in manufacturing companies. So here today we have David Mattersdorfer. David is a visionary entrepreneur dedicated to advancing circular economy principles with his expertise in technical and engineering domains. He had a successful merger and exit of his company, Polymer Stocklist, and he ventured into the leading operations for the DACH region at Circle. Now, as the founder of Madana, his consultancy firm offers unparalleled guidance to startups and industries navigating sustainable initiatives. His innovative spirit and technical savvy are driving impactful change towards a greener future. We're very excited to have him here today with us. Thank you for taking the time to join us, David. And I'm going to hand it over to Christof now to lead this moderated Q&A with our expert guest here today. So thank you both for being here.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Elizabeth. Also, very warm welcome from my side, David. Thank you for joining here, and we have really an interesting discussion about a very important topic about how to make manufacturing supply chains more sustainable, and also how secondary raw materials can contribute to that. And I think with David, with you, we got a real expert on that topic. So I'm really excited about the discussion and about the feedback, how manufacturing companies use secondary raw materials, what's the impact, and what is the outlook of the market. Perfect. So I would say let's dive into it, David. So before we go into details about the topic, maybe you could set a bit the stage and explain the challenges, the progress in sustainable manufacturing. What is a bit the current state? How do you see the market overall from your side as an expert?
Great. So first of all, I also want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this. And yeah, happy to be here. So to answer your question, yeah, basically I think the whole world currently wants to minimize their environmental impact, right? And I always normally I start my speeches with 20 billion tons going to waste every single year, and those are not recycled or reused. So that's quite a big amount. And manufacturing, of course, plays a very big role in it. And it's not only the manufacturing process itself, it's also the input material and, of course, the products you produce. And there's exciting times coming, you know, with the Sustainable Supply Chain Act, for example. Companies really will have to adopt, and I always say that the earlier they do this, the bigger the advantage in the future for them. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for a quick overview. I mean, yeah, I think everybody feels it. There's a lot going on. Businesses need to change, but often the question is how, and also with changing economic environment, rising interest rates, where to put the focus, sustainability, profit optimization. I think it's like a big challenge for many companies these days.
Yeah.
So moving on to next question. How do you see that companies utilize secondary raw materials in their manufacturing processes? What ways exist there, and how basically have you experienced it, the usage of secondary raw materials?
So I have a big background on polymers, of course, so good expertise here. And to be honest, I have the feeling that the polymer industry, the plastic industry, is quite ahead of the rest. Not technically speaking, because like there's metal recycling, steel recycling, there's glass recycling, which tends to be easier, I would say. And plastic recycling is also a very hot topic because we use a lot of plastic every day with packaging, and there's a lot of different types, and so it can be quite complicated quite quickly. So, and their secondary raw materials play a big role for several years right now. The big question is always, what is the benefit from using them, right? So there's customers who want products from recycled materials. Then there's production companies, manufacturing companies who want to have maybe cheaper input materials. And yeah, of course, but this also then affects the manufacturing process, affects your product, and so on and so on.
Could you
yeah.
Sorry, David, thanks a lot. Could you a bit dive deeper on, you mentioned that for plastic related industry or products, polymer, they are more advanced than other industries. Could you explain a bit how you see the difference in contrast to, let's say, steel or other industries? What is the difference that you see in how they use secondary raw materials?
I think it's especially the politics.
Okay.
Because a lot of but you know, politics set the rules, and the companies need to adopt to these rules. And because plastic packaging and so on is a very also emotional topic by now. You know, it's like you see the fish in the ocean with some plastic in the mouth. You don't have this so much with other materials. And so plastic, I think, always needed to be aware and ready for the future. And plastic is quite well to recycle. The question is always how you use it. My professor always said there's like three types of recycling. You know, it's like there is theoretical recycling, and then there is technical recycling, and then there is practical recycling. And just because something can be recycled technically doesn't mean that it will be recycled practically. This means, for example, if you have a plastic bottle and the bottle never ends up in the collection system, it practically never will be recycled. So it's not only depending on the product itself.
Sure, perfect. Thanks a lot. So basically, because plastic has a bit become the evil in public opinion from regulation perspective, they were more forced to adopt ways to better recycle plastic, to bring it back into the manufacturing process to avoid waste, in contrast to other industries.
And I also might add that I think it's kind of the wrong focus, because we focus a lot on packaging waste and therefore mostly plastics. Whereas waste from industries is actually the bigger role if you look at the mass balances and so on. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Good. Let's move on to another question. Now, we talked about their differences and how industries adopt it. What do you see? We already talked a bit about regulatory framework, public opinion, but what do you see are maybe some main challenges and approaches how companies integrate secondary raw material in their production processes?
There's a lot of challenges. I think the biggest challenge, besides legislation, I think one of the biggest challenges is that, there's this picture with the linear and the circular economy. And with the linear economy, you always were used to input material, which always has the same specifications, quality, quantity, and so on. And you don't have this so much with recycled material. So either you set up a really good supply chain, or you set up a how do you call it, like agile manufacturing process, which is able to adopt on the different incoming materials. And then the same thing goes for the output, right? You need, customers want to have, like, if they buy your product 10 times, they want to have 10 times the same product, not with different specifications, not in a different color, and so on and so on. So this makes it quite difficult. And also, what is important to know, there's product and there's material which cannot be made out of recycled materials and also cannot be recycled. So either or. For example, if you look in the health industry, if you have some packaging there which contains some instruments for surgery, you're actually not really good to go with recycled material, because the danger of infection of bacteria and so on would be too high. And this also comes the other way around, that if you have applications, maybe also again in healthcare, where you have to use a lot of multi-layer materials, it will be really hard to recycle this.
Yeah. Okay. So to summarize, so you see on the one hand side, on the demand side, what the customer requests and what the companies need to live up to. On the other hand side, it complicates the whole production and sourcing process that needs to be much more flexible when incorporating also secondary raw materials, in contrast to just buying virgin raw materials and using them for production processes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we talked about it drives complexity. It can be, of course, also for businesses a selling point. They recycle, that it's more sustainable. We also need to be realistic. The companies also look at cost savings. So can you talk a bit more about the business case of including secondary raw materials?
Again, plastics. For example, you have rPET and the virgin PET, and rPET actually goes for a higher price. So if you use this raw material for your manufacturing process, you actually have to pay more money if you use recycled PET, which is of course good for the recycler, but bad for the manufacturing process itself. So this is one example, but there's other industries, like if you look into metals, into glass, it's cheaper, of course, to use secondary raw materials. It's cheaper to use metal scrap than have to mine it again and process it so you're able to put it into the furnace. So that's the side of cost savings. And while we also spoke before about the manufacturing process, sometimes I think customers really need to think out of the box. And I had a customer, which is Lindner. I think they don't mind me saying their name out loud. So what they do is they produce, for example, gypsum boards. It's the boards you use for covering cables up at the ceiling. So you just put a board in between so you don't see it, or also on the floor. And what they do is they started collecting old gypsum boards from the construction sites and refurbish them actually. So they have now a new manufacturing process with it, which is less energy intensive, less raw material intensive, and they're able to verify it so it has the same specifications as a new board. And so the production costs went down a lot. And yeah, this is a very good example, I think.
So it's, so to say, it depends a bit on the industry, what kind of raw materials you use. So it's not equal among industries. It can be very different. And I think it is also some kind of a total cost probably analyzed that needs to be applied. So what is the sourcing cost? But as you mentioned, what does it then bring maybe on the sales side, but also what are the costs for maybe higher flexibility in production and supply chain to integrate those raw materials?
Yeah. And of course, in the future, it's the sourcing part of raw materials, the secondary raw materials, will be hard. So I would say in order to save costs in the future, you have to set up a solid supply chain now. And there's ways that you can set up supply chains which are not so dependent on the market. And so you unlink yourself of the market and then are actually able to save good prices for the future. So example would be, again, in the plastic industry, if you use for producing your products, you use some plastic flakes, for example. You now can buy those plastic flakes from another recycling company. But then you're again in the market. So there's a lot of recyclers recycling plastic waste and offering you those plastic flakes. And a way around that would actually be to build your own supply chain. So to see, okay, which kind of waste is out there, which actually contains my plastic? Who is able to, I don't know, tear it apart, dismantle it for me, and then lay on the side the car bumper I need to be regrinded so I can use it in the process. This is a way how you actually make yourself or your company a little less dependent on the markets. So this would be cost saving for the future. I see as possible.
Yeah, definitely. It's about also risk diversification and being able to not need to take every market swing, so that you have the possibility to have alternative sources, which of course is great for a supply chain to diversify.
Exactly.
Now, what kind of maybe new trends can you observe in the market for maybe adoption of new technologies or how business approach it? Is there anything which has changes maybe in the last year or two compared to maybe the previous years? Do you see it accelerate? And where is this going from your view?
It's changing a lot. I just was writing this down in an article of mine that my father told me that when he was working at Fürst Alpine, they actually paid a waste management company to get rid of copper cables. So this is not the case anymore. Like now you're able to sell those because copper is very valuable. So over the past years, it changed a lot, and it's going to change a lot more. And in plastic, for example, you can see that there is, speaking about technology, chemical recycling is definitely will increase in the future, although they currently have or had legal issues because it doesn't account into the recycling rates. So yeah. But this is a big topic. Also, we see emerging more and more. So there's more and more technology, more and more companies setting up those technologies. Also in Austria, You have, for example, OMV, the re-oil is quite a big venture. Chemically recycling plastics. So this is a big trend. And then further trends I see, and this is quite interesting also in the building industry, for example. If you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have said that this is not a feasible business model, but so companies really think about it and try to implement this is actually also in the construction industry to rent out construction parts, to rent out windows, to rent out walls, just because they know they need to get back the material in the future, to be able to offer recycled bricks, for example. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is quite a change in the market, I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely new emerging also business models attached to that evolution.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, from what you see now, but also where it's going, how do you see really the environmental impact? Is it, I mean, it's often the discussion, it's not going far enough. What is the actual status in your view? What is the environmental impact of using those secondary raw materials?
Yeah. Like, I don't want to be too negative here because I think that circular economy is really a great option for the future. And it is the way of the future. And as I said before, I think that companies who take the right path already now, they will prepare very well. But there's also like, the bigger the companies, the lazier they are, I would say. So they have a hard time adopting. And so for them, it's mostly about economics, about costs. So you only do it if you profit from it financially. And this is not always the case yet. So I think you have to still invest now a little bit of money to have this big advantage in the future. Yeah. Also to answer this question, maybe more specifically, of course, LCA, life cycle assessment, is the way to analyze those kind of processes and their impact. But also here I would be a little bit cautious because at the end of the day, every company needs to be aware of their impact themselves. And it's the companies are responsible for it and not some LCA sheet. And because, for example, it always depends what you account in a life cycle assessment, but you know this probably better than me. So if you have a production process, a manufacturing process, and you now use recycled plastics instead of virgin plastics, does this make your manufacturing process actually, does it reduce its environmental impact? It's a big question.
Sure, yeah. And I think it also makes it more complicated, like who balances it or who has it on his, let's say, emission tracking sheet. Because it's not just one company, there might be various businesses involved in creating the final finished product, which has maybe a lower carbon footprint than other products.
Yeah, definitely. And this is why I always tell my customers that I'm not producing like some sheets or presentation which shows how environmentally friendly a company is. I think it's really, you hear this a lot, but it's true. Companies and people, we have to do something, not only create reports, but really implement it and change it. This is the important thing.
Thank you. Are there, in your view, some key players? You just talked about taking action and really doing it, not just reporting on something. thinking about maybe manufacturing business here in Central Europe, are there maybe some key players they can collaborate with in order to make this transition more smooth for them? Because as said, it might be a change in mindset, it might entail a change in the whole sourcing, production, distribution related topics. Also, when you source virgin raw material versus secondary, you might also, for example, predict how many secondary raw materials are available. How do you see maybe this ecosystem? What are maybe some key players that can help businesses from manufacturing to do this transition to include maybe more secondary raw materials in their production processes?
Yeah. I would probably say that it's not a key player, but companies definitely need to prepare for change. So my first step would be getting somebody here to lead me through this kind of change. Because if you change to secondary raw materials, not like there's definitely people in the company who will not like it. Because if you're a technician managing the manufacturing process, it makes the job just harder, right? So getting his vote will be quite a challenge. And so we, for example, we had a project, a manufacturer of electronic devices, and they said they want to be integrated in the circular economy, be part of it and do the best they can. And me as a advisor here or a consultant, I don't really have the expertise because I don't know much about electronic devices. Like the customer has the expertise. So what they need is actually but what I can help them with is to transform the whole company, because you need to find ways to gather the expertise, what is possible, what is not possible, from a technical point of view, from an economic point of view, from other shareholders, from your customers, and so on and so on. And yeah, this is quite a job. So I think that to go through a transition this big, you first of all really need to make sure about communication, so everyone in your company is on board with it. Otherwise, it will be probably a painful journey.
Sure, yeah. It makes it always tricky when there are many stakeholders with different interests involved, but also such a change where maybe also knowledge is lacking within the organization. First need to be envision what is the impact on different business areas before taking actions in this direction.
Yeah, I think so. Also, we had the experience like working with a manufacturing company that even for production residues, like cut-offs, to just not throw them into a random bin, but actually collect it. It was quite a tough challenge to convince everybody in the company to, this is important, so do it.
Yeah, I think it's not easy change and requires a lot of time and also probably good executive sponsorship to move ahead despite maybe having resistance from some stakeholders. That also brings us a bit to the other question, which maybe we already answered somewhat. So what strategies, you mentioned good communication is vital for such a process. Do you see any other strategies besides maybe executive sponsorship and good communication, how to engage your internal and external stakeholders to make this transformation to more sustainable and circular production processes or business operations?
Mm-hmm. I think that also customers have to be educated as well. At the end, they're the one buying your products. So you have to explain them why this is a good way of doing it, why you're actually changing the process, why maybe the product is now more expensive, or why the product is now maybe not so shiny anymore. And then there's, of course, connected to this greenwashing. So just to use brown paper instead of white paper is not the solution. Yeah, and then, of course, external stakeholder politics again. Using secondary raw materials is can be really a pain in the ass regarding the legal issues. Like sometimes it's not so easy if something is waste or not waste. There's end of waste criteria, but they're different in all the member states of the European Union. Yeah, so there you also need to be fit to actually set up a solid supply chain for your process as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Great. Now, moving a bit further, assuming, okay, company has implemented the ways, do you see some best practices, how businesses keep evolving, keep improving? Or is it more like that you see it's rather an early stage and companies more are in this shift phase to adopt it? How do you see it, and how can maybe companies also, ensure that they improve over time and basically follow through with their vision of becoming more circular in their processes?
Mm-hmm. This is a hard thing. So for the manufacturing process, you can measure certain things, of course, the cost of production, the time of production, raw material intensity, and so on and so on. Energy intensity, of course, is probably one of the biggest points regarding manufacturing. Material efficiency, but connected to like not the whole company, but just the manufacturing process. I think material-wise, of course, the supply chain is most important. And there again, I'm really convinced that companies need to start think differently. So don't just get suppliers who have certain certification. Of course, some companies need it, but really be convinced. Go to yourself and have a look. This is for me, it's really important because at the end of the day, it's the company who is responsible for it and responsible for the materials they buy. So yeah, be responsible.
Good point.
And then this is also very well documented in the sustainable supply chain. Of course, it's not only about quality and quantity, it's also about human rights, about transportation, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of aspects companies will have to have a look at. Yeah.
So basically, not just improving one aspect, but taking a more holistic approach to see the bigger picture and try to improve on different areas.
I think that's the always the thing, right? I think circular economy changes also manufacturing processes for so many companies that it's not enough to just have a look at which different material I can use in the input of the company or in the process, but also it's for each company it's different, but you have to have a look which activity has the biggest impact and really need to think out of the box. As I said before, like refurbishing those gypsum boards really paid off for them instead of using recycled materials just.
Yeah. Good. Can you maybe give from your experience some success stories where companies are thrilled with their journey? They have seen it has an impact to be more sustainable, but maybe also feedback from stakeholders internally, externally, and also maybe on their bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I mentioned already the Lindner case. I think business-wise, this was really clever. there's a lot in the circular economy. It's mostly, and this is why I also merged my company with Circle. It's mostly about transparency and interaction. So we moved millions of tons of materials because we knew or we learned who can use those materials. So there's big companies, cement companies and other material companies who have thousands, 100,000 of tons just lying around somewhere, because if they just lay there, it's not very cost intensive. But if you're able to actually sell those, or somebody can reuse those, it's really a huge impact. Yeah, so there's a lot of different stories. What else is there? And of course, it's what we also do is help with internal recycling. So it's always about closing the loop. So this was with ceramic residues, right? So ceramic production, they had those residues, didn't know what to do with them. So we found a solution to actually regrind them and integrate in their production process again. And so they saved waste management costs, but also costs for the input materials.
Yeah, that's a good business case. Great. Yeah, thanks a lot, David, for your time today. It's really a very interesting topic, and I think many companies are to some degree still far away from it. Departments get set up to move in this direction, but as you said, it's a journey that requires the input from different stakeholders within the company, but also from customers, regulatory. So it's really a very interesting field, and we hope that a lot will change over the next few years to move more the direction of the circular economy. Maybe you want to share some concluding thoughts on the topic as subject expert.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is really to just do something. Not only look on certain certifications you need to have, or your customers need to have, or your suppliers need to have, but really be, at the end of the day, responsible for what you buy, what you process, what you sell. And yeah, it's a very big shift. And the ones who start now will have a big advantage in the future. That's what I strongly believe. And what else I wanted to say? Yeah, it's a big shift, and it needs to be done, and it only can work globally and in total if we, all of us, start working together. That's the principles, I think, which need to be followed for this to work. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for those final thoughts on the topic. Also, thanks a lot again for joining us here to discuss this very important topic for the manufacturing industry.
Thank you. Happy to.